legend Max Scherzer joining us right now. Max, how you doing, man? Happy offseason. Also, most importantly, dude, because we haven't talked to you since, congratulations on winning a World Series title. Worth
Yep. All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. Yep. Good. Yep. Number 2. That one was really cool. So good to be a champ again.
Dude, worth the craziness during the season to get over there?
Yep. Yep. Wife and I definitely had a nice little reflection upon that of just how crazy this year was, and it was all worth it, and that's why you do it. We'll pack up the family, do whatever we got to do to be able to win, and it's all worth it.
AJ, you got to get the lowdown. Don't you like to hear about the celebration play-by-play?
Yeah. Dude, we saw it. Him and Hedges were everywhere. It was like Bochy, and then it was Scherzer and Hedges. Every time they'd show a camera, it was Hedges and Scherzer like this on each other, dumping champagne. It was incredible.
Yeah, Hedgie's a good one. We quickly found out we're some brothers from another mother pretty quick, and so we speak the same language. So yeah, during the celebrations, he got after it, and anytime somebody gets after it during a celebration, I'll be right there with you. So yeah, we had a good time with it the whole time.
I love that. And how was Chris Young when you hopped over there? Did you have, conversations with him? I feel like, I don't know if you knew him in the past, but he's obviously a pretty smart dude, and he values starting pitching, which is a pretty big deal. They won a World Series, I think, quicker than most people think they were going to when they were down and rebuilding.
Yeah, I had worked with Chris. When he worked for MLB, I've been on some committees with him and gone over some issues before, so I kind of know him before. But that was a way different feel of actually having your GM be a former player. So when you do have conversations with the GM, it was just love Mike Rizzo, love all the GMs I've ever played for, but when it's a former player, there's just a different feel to it and what he brings to the table, and really liked it, really enjoyed it. And so, for me, that was a really cool experience of having him, be the GM.
Were you guys on like the executive committee together? You and Chris? He went to Princeton. You went to that academic powerhouse, Missouri. So I figured you guys were probably on the same committees. And also,
yeah.
Are you excited about the new pitch clock? You're going to have 2 less seconds every time.
All right, let's get to one thing first. First off, he went to Princeton. I went to Mizzou. He's smart. I'm somewhat smart. But Mizzou's smart enough to still beat Florida there, with the last second field goal. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, and our kicker. You see the kicker? He was chomping at you too. So
I saw that live too. I saw it.
You have to be smart. You have to be clever to be able to know to do that within the moment. So yeah, that's a Mizzou education for you. But no, yeah, he was on the committees, on the rules committee, and we different rules that this is like 5 years ago. Of going through that and hearing what each side had to want to bring. So none of those rules really got implemented from any of those conversations that we had back then. Imagine that. But yeah, no, obviously, he's got a bright mind. When I worked with him just on when he worked for MLB, but with the baseball side, he does a great job of taking in the analytics where they need, but it's really old school. We're going to keep it real. Use your eyes, use your feel, use the human element to this. We lead with that, not the computers.
Now, let me ask you this: is it still the same way? So, say Major League comes up with a rule, don't you have to wait a year, and then if you guys say no, then after that year they get to decide on it anymore? Is that over with?
Yeah, it's over with. It's 45 days. So when you come out, you see with this new CBA that it's this committee, the competition committee, completely rigged for the owners, where they have 6 seats, 6 votes. The players only have four votes, and there's 1 umpire vote. So if the owners want something, they can implement it at will within 45 days.
Okay, so before we dive into, say, the pitch clock specifically, how should it be done? Because, of course, we're looking at this in the optics, and Whit Merrifield comes on the show a lot, and he's on that rules committee, and he's like, sometimes they test things out, and they don't even tell us they're testing them out. I find out on your show or in an article. So is it just kind of like customary, here, we'll have some players on so they can be part of the conversation, but they can't actually make any decisions, even though they're the dudes on the field?
Yeah, disappointed by that. You would think it would be equal amount of owners and equal amount of players, and then kind of the deciding vote should be the umpire. That would make sense to me, but that's not how it got negotiated.
Yep. Okay, so
That's just.
That's what I'm saying.
I've never heard of such a thing. Not to keep harping on it. That's
I
absolutely
know.
ridiculous. That just how is that even fair? Like how does that even happen? Like is that partly players to blame? Is that partly the MLB association? Like what happened there?
That was how the negotiation went. Like I said, I voted no. The whole subcommittee voted no. There was details in there that we did not like, and this is one of them. And so, we're seeing the consequences of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's jump to the pitch clock here.
Sure.
We see the news about the seconds ticking down. Your thoughts on how that's going to play out and really where the sweet spot is for the pitch clock?
I guess when we first when the pitch clock's coming into existence, you look at what the scope was, like try to clean up the dead time within the game. And as players, we agree with that. You look at this, we cleaned up a lot of dead time, but there's still problems with the clock. Maybe there's a way to talk about where we need to clean up, where this can be, but at the end of the day, I'll never sit here and say that we need a clock. We just need rules. 90% of what the clock has accomplished is just making the hitter stay in the box. So the fact that the hitter stays in the box a lot better now, that's 90% of what's happened here. There's some components where the pitchers, some relievers or just pitchers in general, some guys were slow, but I just don't feel like that was a huge component of where the pace was. I feel like 90% of this problem was on the hitters and their ability to call timeout whenever. Only having one timeout had a huge impact, I thought, on the clock. So when you start talking about we need to shave more time off the clock, especially when runners on base, I don't get what the scope of that is. Why are we even talking about this? Because actually, since getting to get traded to Texas, I actually got to talk to and finally meet Keith Meister, and I was very happy when I got over there. I was like, I'm finally glad I meet you. Glad I don't know you whatsoever, but it's finally nice to meet you. He's one of the most renowned surgeons in the game, does all the Tommy Johns and whatnot. And when you actually talk to, Keith and having conversations with about him, and that he saw, that the elbow injuries this year, that they're just way more severe. If you look at all the data that came across the game, that the pitcher injuries, arm injuries out of the pitchers, they're on the high end, but you've seen high end numbers, but the severity of the injuries are much more problematic from Keith, from the doctors. He talks to Neil Elitrosh, another renowned surgeon within the game, and both of them are saying the same thing, that they saw an uptick in severity. So it makes you start scratching your head. What's unique to 2023 here? And when you make the game go faster, part of the thing is, as a pitcher, I mean, your form I lived it. Like, your form just gets fatigued faster. And so for starting pitchers, they're trying to pitch, 100 pitches, like, you're going through that fatigue and you're overgripping the baseball to try to combat that fatigue. And, that's a very plausible reasoning, for the severity of the elbow injury. So when you actually step back for a second and start thinking about, let's protect the pitchers here for a second, and that the clock might, it's not a 1-for-1, correlation. There's multiple reasons why you would have, for a pitcher, any type of form, strain, Tommy John, you name it. There's multiple factors in this, but why would we ever have the clock be a factor? Like, if there's a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there that make sure that the pitchers are okay, I think we should take that. Like, we should never be stepping through, a pitcher's elbow to accomplish an agenda piece within the game. So when you actually think about, where are the most stressful pitches? Well, it's when you're out of the stretch. And so if you're talking about with runners on base, we're going to play faster. Why are we not even taking the pitcher's health into account on this when we have both the top surgeons in the game, quoted publicly saying that, hey, MLB needs to take a look at this.
And I think you're spot on. I think that's the number one thing that MLB has to take a look at. And I don't think they really take the time to do that kind of stuff, because if they did, they would change that. Now, you talk about health. I talk about fatigue and endurance as well, too. I asked Corbin Burns the same question. Does this change your offseason program? He says, for sure it does. Now, for you, you're a little older now, too, as well. Does this change your program of your offseason?
No, because I've always had an endurance, aerobic, running, you name it, into my program. I actually would have loved to, if this was like 7 years ago when I was in tip-top shape, how I would have been able to really handle the clock. But now, I got to find ways to be able to, still get my cardio in and have that type of conditioning because, the clock definitely puts when you're playing at this pace, there's a endurance factor to this, and I've always enjoyed that. But now there's a much more onus on it.
So, Max, what would you say?
Max.
Oh, go ahead, AJ.
No, I'm just going to say, Max, is the 5 minutes really worth it? Is the
Right.
5 minutes really worth the possibility of more serious injuries in baseball? I mean, it seems like, listen, we all want quicker games as players and as fans, but is the 5 minutes really worth it for all these other problems?
Yeah, when you're in clock world, to answer the question, no, it's not worth it. But so many other times with the pitch clock, it's just making the game go. And there's times where when the game's trying to go, where there's times where you're taking the sign and you're running out of time. You haven't even gotten the whether fastball, slide, or changeup. You're working with your catcher, and the clock's running out. With the runner on base, you just step off. Like, was that the part of that wasn't dead time? Me trying to get on the same page with the catcher is not dead time. How can the clock be affecting that part of the game, and why should it be affecting that part of the game? So that's where when you try to legislate baseball and try to put it into a time component, you have a bunch of unintended consequences because of this. And so, in some instances, it creates more time. It slows down pace because now I got to step off. I'll burn one of my pickoffs, whatever. I got to get on the same page with the catcher. But if I would have just had 2 seconds, I would have been able to get the slider and then thrown the pitch, and I wouldn't even have had to do that. So that's where baseball does not have a game clock, and so that's why I've always been kind of anti-clock, but pro faster pace. You just got to put the rules in place. That's why I've always advocated that to solve the pace problems has to be from rules, not clock.
Max, the problem that I see, and this goes for the game in general, and you even address this with the team, is that everything is just a number in our sport. And we're trying to get away from that because it went too overboard. The commissioner has even said that we went too overboard. Theo Epstein said that and is working with the commissioner on that problem. Yet when this pops up just now, all I see are stats. Oh, we barely get to the end of the clock in these situations anyway, so everyone will be fine. And injuries weren't really up anyway for pitchers according to the numbers, but then you're here telling me, hey, the injuries are more severe and we don't have a number for that, right? And also, how many times do we get to the end of a pitch clock there where, it really could have made a difference and it wouldn't have made that much of a difference in the game, but yet we're only looking at a stat saying, oh, no big deal, let's just shave 2 seconds off. How can we solve that problem in the sport? We're still we're saying that we want to speak to people and get case studies done, but it always just comes down to a statistic again.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part. That's why you got to get out there and speak. You got to get out there in the public. And, for me, I've let the union go. I don't have time for that with 4 kids now. I don't have time to be sitting on phone calls. But if it's, obviously get here into the off season and reflect upon the decisions that were made. You're talking for the game of baseball. It's not necessarily my stats or anybody else's stats. You're thinking what's the best product for the game here? And when you think of it from that lens and you think of it from that scope, what are we doing here? What's driving all this stuff? And take a bigger, wider lens of different issues and realize there's unintended consequences with some of these decisions, and that we need to be thinking about this from a player side and listen to what the players are saying. And that just doesn't. It seems like that falls on tone deaf ears onto MLB.
Yeah, and don't you think the commissioner coming out at the end of the day said we made a bunch of changes already, we're not going to make any more, and now they come out like this. So, and nobody's even mad or saying anything about it, which is frustrating part about the whole situation.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, I would love to talk about adjustments to the clock where we need it. If that was the conversation, I think we could, as much as I'm anti-clock, maybe there are ways to, soften the blow of it and get the good out of it and minimize the bad. Specifically, the in between batters with runners on base, that 30 seconds, that's really tight. I think the game needs a couple more. when there's a runner on base, runner on first base or first and second, a new hitter comes into the box, like you're taking in the whole game. You're identifying all these situations of what's going on that you do need a little bit extra time there. That was one when you actually talk to the MLB officials. That was one of the number one violations was the first batter of an inning and first batter with runners on base. That's not how we got sold on the pitch clock. We didn't say, hey, the first batter of the inning, that's the problem here. No, we got told that there's dead time. Well, we've cleaned up that dead time, and there's certain situations where the clock's impacting the game where it doesn't need to impact it.
So if we could scrap it down and you could draw it up now that we got to see a year of the pitch clock for the first time, and including what you just said, what would you put out there that you think would be kind of the happy medium that would please players, pitchers, fans, ownership, etc., that would make sure that we still keep health in mind and we still keep the pace going and we don't have, the Pedro Baez is like the example that everyone always used, right? Like the human rain delay.
So we got to be in clock world?
Well, it's up to you. It doesn't have to be in clock world, but I'll say this. If it's not clock world and we took that off again, you're going to get strong pushback from a lot of people because they did like that the game was crisper. So if not, what's the solution there? Because going off feel, some dudes clearly don't have a feel. Even umps, like some we can totally trust to be able to run the game well, and others I'm not sure.
Because I'll always advocate that if you keep the hitter in the box and the pitcher stays on the dirt, the game moves along. If you actually look at my personal stats here, that I actually, 2 years ago, I would actually hit my per pitch pace, whatever. I don't even know how they derive it, but I was actually quicker 2 years ago, without a clock, and then this year with the clock, it actually slowed down a little bit because the hitter can call timeout at will. There was just for whatever reason, however that got measured. So here we go. We cut pace down, and yet even in clock world, I actually slowed down. So love to hear how that. Like, how do you explain that? Like, if you don't have clock and the hitter's in the box and the pitcher's on the mound, the game goes. Now, if we have to have a clock, adjustments that need to be made. One, I would say that, obviously the first one I said, more time in between batters with runners on base. Second adjustment I would make is that you at least get one free violation per team. That if we're all playing at pace and one guy makes one mistake, like that should not impact his at bat. Like if there's one, like just give us one freebie, like give us one warning and then start implementing it. And then from there, that it's not balls and strikes. You either have the option to take a ball or strike, or you could lose a mound visit. So, take your pick of whichever one you want to lose. Because at the end of the day, you really actually don't want this impacting balls and strikes. Only in worst case scenario should ever get there. But if you lose a mound visit, like those are critical things that are going to speed up the game, but not to the point. And that will definitely change behavior. You're not going to just be, staying out of the box or going through the clock and lose mound visits. Like those are precious to the game. And then, from there, there's other little things, but let's start there.
Wow. Well, listen, Max, those are great ideas. I love them. But my favorite part of this whole year and this whole pitch clock thing was the games are over quicker, so I got to watch you celebrate. Because otherwise, I would have never gotten to watch you guys celebrate because they were like the games were getting over at like 1 a.m, and I'm like, I can't make it through these games. So listen, I understand what you're saying. Overall, as a fan experience, and for me, broadcasting games, they were over quicker. And I'm on the player side at all times. Listen, I don't want injuries. I don't want guys complaining. I want the players to be healthy because I want the best players out there. Do you think, and you're probably going to say no to this, but because every pitcher that gets hurt when they get older, they're like, oh, the pitch clock affected them. Do you think the pitch clock had anything to do with what you went through this year?
It's hard to say. Hard to say absolutely no. Hard to say absolutely yes. I don't even want to say yes. I don't even want to give it credit because I want to say myself that I'm in condition that I tried to minimize the risk as much as possible. So I don't want to speak. I don't necessarily want to say my injury was because of that for the exact reasons you just said. But to piggyback on what you're saying, I believe. I mean, I'm 100% that the game should be 2 hours 45 minutes. Like, let's play the game. Hitter get in the box, pitcher pitch. Like, I'm 100% for that. We definitely had a pace problem. the game's getting over quicker is great. I'm 100% on board with that. It's how do we get there? What do we need to do to, what rules need to be in place to, to make that happen? So that's the argument that's how I see it. I just see it differently from most.
So one more on the pitching plan in general, in terms of how things are going to change with this game going forward. So we have the clock, which we digested just now, and speeding up the game. The league still says we need to figure out this epidemic of pitchers getting hurt and it becoming a problem over and over again. And like you just mentioned, the injuries are more severe. Then you also have, how do we value starting pitching more? Because let me tell you, dude, it's way more fun when you're on the ledger, right? When Jordan Montgomery is on the poster for tonight's starting pitcher. Nobody enjoyed the Diamondbacks having a bullpen game in the World Series. That's not fun for anyone, right? And it's no offense to the bullpen guys. They don't want to be in that role either. So the commissioner mentioned maybe bringing another pitcher off of the roster, which, guys are not necessarily suddenly just going to be like, well, I'm trained to go 7. So how do you think that fits into the mix here too, to try and solve that problem?
Yeah, we've kind of gone down this thought experiment of what it would be like if you were to, constrict a pitcher roster size, take it from 13 down to 11. Basically cut out if you hear what MLB is saying, that if you cut 2 arms, then it forces the starter to go longer because there's just not arms to go there. When you think about that, how that would be actually implemented in reality, you would probably still have your closer, you'd have your 8th inning guy, and then you would only have 4 bullpen arms behind that. And then all of a sudden, those guys would just become options. You'd just be in the washing machine with those 4 guys. As soon as they pitch, option them out, get the next guy in, keep fresh arms in. So you would actually destroy the relievers. You're either the 8th inning guy, the closer. That's the only stable job. Outside of that, you got to have options. And so I don't think that necessarily would create starters to go longer. You're just going to break more relievers. And yeah, you might get starters to pitch a little bit longer, but that's not going to be the winning solution. You still could see starters coming out after 5th, and you just blow through your whole bullpen after the game, option guys out, next wave in, because that's already kind of what's going on in today's game. For me, I've always been a fan of tying the DH and the starting pitcher together and make that a double hook to help promote that the starter stays in the game longer. But for me, I've never looked at it as a true double hook. That I think the starting pitcher should earn a full-time DH. So if I go out there and I throw 95 pitches, I earn, I made a real start. If I go 6 innings, I feel like I made a real start. And likewise, if I give up 4 runs, I made a real start. I went out there and competed. You guys beat me. I made a real start. So that's how I look at it. If you can make a qualifying start, you make a qualifying start. You throw 95 pitches, you throw 6 innings, or you give up 4 runs, that's a qualified start. Then you get the DH for the full game. If you're unqualified, DH has to either in the game or he's out of the game. So I feel like that would be if you actually think about more of an incentive, there should be more of an incentive, give the carrot to the starting pitcher to continue to go on. I feel like that would be a better way to address the starting pitching issue rather than, hey, just take 2 relievers away and that should fix it.
Max, you obviously went to the Rangers this year, and Chris Young, and he was a starting pitcher, so he values starting pitchers. And then if you look at the way the playoffs played out, because you guys had so many starting pitchers, Heaney and Martin Perez and Dane Dunning, that were all in the bullpen, you guys were able to bridge gaps that a lot of teams weren't able to do. When will we see more teams go back to that of, hey, we need this many starting pitchers that can give us 7 innings, and how do we get more teams to develop starting pitchers?
The only way to do that is win. It's a copycat league, so if more team, I'm not saying it has to be the Rangers. Wherever team wins, everybody's going to try to copycat that. So if there's more teams winning with starting pitchers, you're going to see more teams have starting pitchers. If teams win with more bullpens, guess what? You're going to see more bullpens. So we've kind of seen that over the past, call it, decade of different teams. There's no one way to do it. Do you think of bullpens? I always think the Kansas City Royals with Wade Davis and Holland and Herrera. They were just loaded with arms, and that how dominant they were, and they showed you they could win with that. And so, that's the only way that you'll ever see anything really change in the game is if, starting pitchers are the winning way.
So from pitching to the Oakland A's, I want to talk about how these guys are basically going to be homeless out here for 3 years. They're not going to have anything with them. They're going to be playing in Las Vegas somewhere, I assume, or
They don't
wherever.
even know
They don't even know
Sacramento, San
Sacramento.
Francisco, just wherever.
Yeah, I just want to talk about that. Like, what have you guys talked about there, and what's that whole situation going to be like for these guys?
Yeah, the situation just stinks for everybody involved. For me, I feel for everybody, especially the fans of Oakland. When everybody asks me what's the craziest atmosphere you ever pitched in, don't get me wrong, some World Series games, obviously Game Sevens, and those are pretty special. But I always say those playoff games in Oakland are the craziest atmospheres I ever pitched in. Those fans were absolutely amazing. I still can get goosebumps thinking about pitching in that environment. So I know how good the fans can be there. The stadium's a mess. I get it. It's never been resolved. It just seems like it's a lose situation everywhere around for players, fans, owners. Nothing seems to be working. And so it just seems like, I don't have the solution to this. I don't know what the answer is. I stay up through the media of what's going on with the Oakland situation. Just never seems like there's a good answer for this.
Max, what would you do if you were a player on the Oakland A's and they said, oh, by the way, your next 3 years you're going to play possibly in San Francisco, Sacramento, Las Vegas, Mexico City, Calgary, Vancouver, Tokyo. Like you have no home base. I mean, it just doesn't seem fair. And how does the Players Association have no say in this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Players Association is never going to have say in where the ownership is going to be able to keep a team. So what are we going to do? Be able to force a team to stay in Oakland or force a team to move out of Oakland? I don't think the players are ever going to have the right for that, or even have a say on that. So, I get it. Know your winning argument, but like I said, I don't know what to think. I don't even have the right solution. You really have to get into those meetings, really understand what's going on. But it just seems like a messy situation, and it's a lose situation for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's tough, dude. All right, so lastly, let's finish with how you're feeling so far this offseason. Like, will it be a regular offseason for you? Are you back? Like, did you feel like you had to rush yourself to get back for the postseason? Some of the fans that are watching right now are like, thanks for giving us outs, dude. We did not expect you to even be back. I remember when the injury first popped up, the reports were like, oh, he's probably done.
Yeah. When I first got diagnosed with that Terry strain, that's a 4 to 6 week injury. That's basically what I was told. And when I did it, did it in the middle of September. So I basically knew my regular season was done. We'd have to get deep into the playoffs to even have a shot. But for one day I was like, really ticked off that my season was over, especially the regular season, that I wasn't going to be able to help, get the playoff push. But then the next day I realized, like, no, this team's good. I'm not going to quit on this team. I'm not going to quit on my season. That if you gave me a shot that maybe be back in the middle of October, you know what? I'll make sure it's 4 weeks. I'll do everything on my end to give myself a shot to be back in any capacity, whatever it is. Just find a way to get back out there, and did the rehab and found a way to keep it at 4 weeks. And be able to get back out there at the right time. And sure enough, the team got hot there in October and allowed me to be able to get back out there. So that's why you never quit. You never know with baseball. You can never count anybody out, count anybody in. You always got to play it out, and you always got to be ready for any scenario. And for me, I was ready for that postseason. That started a month earlier.
Yeah, and also, the team that you're on clearly is aggressive. So I don't think they're going to be sitting around in the offseason, too. You're going to show up in spring training with a few new faces, too, and be like, all right, let's go. Another one. This is a championship contender again for you in 2025. Is there any doubt that the Rangers are going to be playing for big boys? Hey, you might be teammates with Shohei Ohtani in March.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing to have. Yeah, I mean, but I've seen it all. I've been on great teams that haven't won. I've been on great teams that have won. So I've kind of, you never know what you're going to get in the season. That's why you always got to watch the season. You can't predict it. You can't predict this game with a computer. It can point you in the right direction, but you never know how this is going to go, because I guarantee you, no one here was last year going to say the Arizona Diamondbacks were going to be in the World Series. I don't think there was anybody. Look what they did. Amazing season that they had. Even the Texas Rangers. I don't think anybody would have said the Texas Rangers were going to be in the World Series, and yet here they were. So that's where you got to just go into the season, see how it unfolds. But given that, seeing how the Rangers played, being in that clubhouse. If any team coming back, man, you gotta love your chances as much as anything. I respect the league so much and how hard it is to win at this level. There's no guarantees in this game or anything like that, but you gotta love the shot that we have and the team that we can do it with.
So I'm giving you your time right now. So I need your pitch. And I know there's one thing that you can talk about the Ohtani, basically saying, hey, no state tax over here. You're going to save a lot more money. So if you want to give your pitch out right now, you can go right now, big dog.
Yeah, that money's great, but winning's better. So
yes,
hey, we
there
won.
You go.
You want to come win? That's better than money, I promise.
All right, I'm sure he's watching, but we can't say too much because
no, you can.
No,
he's a free agent.
Listen, Ohtani said if something leaks out on the team here, then I'm
not
going.
Publicly, he can talk about it. There,
I
know,
yeah,
right?
I have no knowledge. I have not talked to anybody within the Rangers organization about Ohtani. But if you ask my opinion, the answer is yes.
Love it.
He's been keeping it real tight. But we'll see. Hopefully, we'll find something out. I think the Rangers are going to be involved. So, Max, you just kick back and watch. We'll report on it. And thanks for catching up with us, dude. Enjoy the offseason. Congrats again on the ring.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, fellas.